Welcome to the Sports Science Dudes. I am your host, Dr. Jose Antonio, with my inimitable co-host, Dr. Anthony Ricci. If you're a first-time listener, hit the subscribe button and like the show. We're on YouTube and on Spotify, so you'll find us there. Today, we have two special guests. Katie Emerson, MSRD LDN, that's a lot of letters, is a registered and licensed dietitian, so registered and licensed, just keep that in mind. In Florida, she holds a bachelor's degree in science education and an MS in nutrition and dietetics with a concentration in sports nutrition. She has experience working with collegiate athletes from the University of Miami, tactical personnel like BSO police, firefighters, and the SWAT team, along with level 1 trauma patients in the hospital. She's currently the manager of scientific affairs at Nutrition 21, so she could tell us a little bit about that. Where she works alongside the R&D team in creating and researching novel ingredients for the sports nutrition, esports, and healthy aging market. And our other guest is Cassandra, i.e. Cassie Evans, is a registered dietitian. We got a lot of dietitians today,
I'm
Tony.
also licensed. Technically, I'm licensed too.
Licensed, registered, all that fun stuff. She's also a published researcher. She studied sports nutrition and completed an internship with the University of Miami sports nutrition team. I heard that was a lot of fun, by the way. She learned a lot. And at Nova Southeastern University sports performance team. She holds a BS degree in exercise and sports science, and she earned her CISSN in 2018. Currently, she is pursuing her PhD in human and sports performance from Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions, and her and I do quite a bit of work together. Now, before we get to them, I want to make a quick plug for the ISSN conference. It is June 15 to 17, Fort Lauderdale Beach. Register at issn.net. That is issn.net. So, welcome to the show, ladies. It is International RD Day. I know Tony, he loves RDs.
Absolutely.
He had like cupcakes to bring, but since you guys are not in all the same location, we can't like all celebrate by eating cupcakes, because I know Cassie loves cupcakes.
Cupcakes and cookies. I mean, they're like definitely my favorite food, preferably in the middle of the night.
Okay.
I just had a cookie, so we're good. Enjoy the tea.
Well, there. I'm glad you guys love sugar, because sugar's fun and sugar's good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I have actually a multitude of questions as it relates to, I guess let's start with the dietetics profession. And first we'll start off with a story. Tony, you remember when Charles was on, he talked about how he was the black sheep of his dietetics program.
Yeah, he was. Absolutely.
Yeah. Charles Stull said, his instructors looked at him kind of odd because he consumed a lot of protein. And he reveled in it because he's like, screw you, I'll eat whatever I want. And I actually recently got a text message from someone in a master's program in nutrition, a dietetics program, and he basically said the exact same thing. And this is a story that I've heard, and I'm a lot older than you guys. Well, Tony and I are older than you two. You two are like babies. This is
I have babies.
Yes. This is a story I've heard for like 30 years. So what is it about the dietetics program that seems to be, at least the way they teach you, anti-protein? And I'll let you guys take it away.
If I had to guess, I really think that it comes from like a couple different things. I think the one, and you recently shared a paper about like the renal failure and protein intake, but they really harp on, at least in the medical nutrition therapy side of things, when we take we took 2 to 3 semesters of that, really kind of jump in on that it's bad for the kidneys. And because you do have at least prescribed is a restricted protein diet unless you have some other stuff going on with your kidneys. So I think that's one of the places that is the source of why they like slam protein. I think another one, and once again, this is more correlation than causation, but they do that lots of red meat is associated with poor cardiovascular outcomes. And people just kind of automatically associate red meat with protein. I think they fail to mention that we're not talking about like a filet. We're talking about like salami, hot dogs. We're talking about like the processed red meat, which is normally correlated with poor cardiovascular outcomes. And I think those are the two, at least in my opinion, main sources of why they slam protein so badly. And then of course, there's the whole bad for your bones because somehow it pulls the calcium out, which is supposed to buffer the, acidity from I just think it's the old archaic way of thinking. And listen, we can use eggs as an example. 1 minute they're really cool, and 1 minute everyone's slamming them again. Once again, now they're back into the news as being good for you. I think for whatever reason, dietetics is slow sometimes to catch up with the changes in the science and in the available research.
I think,
Well-
Cassie, you nailed it, but I think it really comes back to what we're taught. And I think it lacks current updated research. And, I don't know if Cassie, you had to, but I wrote a paper when we were in the program, and I used the ISSN stance on protein recommended allowance. And I used that in my paper, and I remember getting in trouble. I got like chastised for it because they were like, well, where's your reference? And I was like, it's right there. It's from the ISSN. And they're like, well, that's not the protein recommendation that we use. We use the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And I said, yeah, but if you look at the current literature, that actually needs to be updated. So Cassie's point is valid, but also they just need to be more updated on the research. It's slow.
Now, okay, updated, but we're talking the last 40 years. So
If you
Right.
look
And-
at somebody very wise said to me when I was doing the master's program at Nova that it's a professional program and it's not the same per se as getting a master's. Somebody wise being on this call, and I didn't understand what they
it's a
think.
professional degree, not an academic one.
Yes, and I didn't understand that because as an undergrad, it didn't really make sense to me at the time, but I understood that as I went through the program because with most, at least the way that dietetics works is you have to go to an ASCEND accredited college. So your degree has to be from ASCEND accredited, and you are forced to meet, and not in a bad way, but you're forced to meet these competencies that prepare you to be a dietitian. And historically, dietitians have been in hospitals or clinical settings, right? So they're not really a focus on what's the latest research, how to, break down the research, how to read the available literature, what are considered reputable sources, what to do with, some of these recommendations that differ from with the changing, available literature that's out there now. And so I don't know why they're slow to catch up, but yeah, they haven't really changed their model in terms of having it be so clinically focused. It's still very much like that. They do have a future model now, which is slightly different, but still in my experience, and I think Katie can attest to the same thing, it's still very clinical in their approach. It's all about my plate, health, and, what you're going to do to improve somebody through nutrition counseling.
Yeah.
Now, Katie, you said you wrote a paper on protein and you used the position paper as a reference. Was there a criticism of the reference per se? Was there a scientific criticism of the reference per se? Let's say that.
No, but it was more of we're supposed to be using certain materials that have been recommended and approved. Again, talking about black sheep, I think Cassie and I fill that role pretty greatly in the program going through together, which is why we bonded, is because,
Good.
not everything you're given when you're in an academic setting is correct. And I think what's important, and something I teach other students too, is you should always approach things with skepticism, what am I trying to speculation. And when you read something, you should go, does that make sense?
Yeah. Skepticism.
Thank you. I'm dyslexic, by the way. So
You're not alone. Right, me too, Katie. So
are you? My daughter
Yes.
is too. It's so frustrating. But so when you read something, you should always think of, is this correct? And can I find something else to validate it? And that's kind of how my role has been in research, is I need to see it repeated over and over again to know that it's valid. And just because it's in one textbook written in Texas or Florida, depending, because that's where most textbooks are written, or California, they're biased and they're outdated. And so even though we had this approved group of textbooks that we were supposed to use, Cassie and I had wonderful mentors outside of the program, wink, wink, and were able to steer us in the right direction and teach us to, think outside what we're being taught. So I think I really hone in on telling other students to do that. And I encourage them to do that. And when I use that reference, it wasn't like they were against it per se, but they kind of try to steer me back into that. Use the textbook only and use these references only. I still left it, but.
I mean, I found the textbook, one of the medical nutrition therapy textbooks I found was really funny because in one paragraph, it did say that too much in the textbook, this to me is just crazy, but in the textbook, it did say that too much protein could be detrimental for bone metabolism and bone health. And then literally like 3 paragraphs later, it talks about how protein malnutrition interferes with bone metabolism and not enough protein is bad for your bones. And I just thought that's such a like weird thing to contradict yourself twice in the same chapter, like let alone pretty much on the same page, you know? So like, and I definitely think that back to Katie probably can speak to the same thing because I didn't pass the dietetics exam the first time that I took it. And it's the way you study for the dietetic exam is very different than I think the knowledge that's available out there, because I would get these questions that to me, like, I'm like, well, this would be the more current answer. And I would get it wrong because you have to answer it in the way that the academy is teaching you.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, with these test questions, and I think recently now they've started updating the test itself, but the test itself hadn't been updated in quite some time. So I'm answering questions based on like what the academy is teaching me, even though the literature is showing that like this might not be the best answer, or, you know, this might not be the best way to treat something. Also, that test in general is really annoying because it's going to ask you about diabetes in one question, and then the next question is going to ask you the proper pour ratio for pancake batter. So,
Wait,
seriously.
really? That kind of
Yes.
question?
It was the most bizarre, and I failed it the first time too. I failed by 1 point.
same.
And I remember being so angry because it's like giving you a patient with 7 different diagnoses and you got to do a tube feed. And I mean, this whole calculation of, I became a mathematician through this phase. And then all of a sudden it was like, what scoop number and how many scoops do you need to make a meal for 150 people at a cafeteria? And I'm just like, what?
Or
Just
there's a
happened?
question that's like, you bake a cake and there's tunnels in it. What ingredient did you not have enough of or too much of? And I'm like, you go from like baking science to food science, or like to food service, I should say, to like medical nutrition therapy.
What's a tunnel in a cake?
It like funnels down. So I
Okay,
think
all
that's,
right.
is that too much sugar? I don't
Okay.
remember.
Yeah, all right. Well, all right. I see the relationship between tunnels and cakes and diabetes, though. There's some data on that too. Wow, those are real questions.
Yes. So studying was Katie, well, we know that Katie's super organized. She definitely helped me study, but like the second time around, somebody asked me, oh, like maybe you can help people that didn't pass the first time by sharing like what you did to pass the second time. And like, quite honestly, I couldn't tell you if I did anything different. I was just annoyed. And I went into that second test with the mindset that if I don't pass this time, I don't care. The RD is not that important to me.
We did the exact same thing. I was like, if I don't pass it the second time, forget it.
Screw it.
So,
I'm not sure that. Sorry, Tony, go ahead.
No, so I maybe as we discuss this, right? Just quickly, ladies, you can help us out here. So we started on the protein side, and Dr. A was talking about how, you know, they're not so much anti-protein, but certainly can you just compare and contrast for everybody, you know, what we would say in sport nutrition might be an optimal protein intake, and what are they recommending? So what does the academy recommend? What are their recommendations? Are they RDA, or are they separate, or what are they actually?
well, RDA for general population, I think is the same across the board, is 0.8 grams per kilogram.
Correct. Is that the academy's?
Yeah. I
Okay.
believe the highest they go from, Academy has a position stand specifically for sports nutrition. Katie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it goes above 1.4. I think it's 1.2 to 1.4 grams per kilogram.
Got it. All right.
I didn't know I thought it was 1.2, but maybe I haven't looked at it in quite a while. So it could be 1.4.
But they do cite that excess protein, you know, could be stored as body fat, or, you know, just some of the things or misconceptions about protein that have long been proven incorrect.
Mhm.
Or
But are
shown to be.
still taught.
I think I heard someone tell me one time that a caveman, as civilized as they were, beating a woman over the head with a club,
Ooh.
dragging her into a cave, and then they both, do you know who said this? Talking about protein intake, and that they didn't just stop utilizing the benefits of protein because they ate too much protein for the day. It just doesn't magically just stop working. And through research and these really cool innovation technologies that I've experienced in the industry, you can actually measure the NPS continuing above that protein ceiling. So even though there's like a cap ceiling of like 40 grams in a sitting, with these really cool concentrated protein profiles, as well as this technology of fermentation, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff out there, we can actually see that ceiling, you keep going, like you keep seeing the benefits of muscle protein synthesis. So this concept of you eat too much protein, you're going to get fat, just doesn't seem to be really validated.
Well, and I think people forget too that we use protein beyond our muscles. I think obviously in sports,
Right.
we really end up focusing on the muscle protein synthesis, but looking at protein is used for our immune system, our skin cells, our bone. I mean, literally, they're not called the building blocks of the body for no reason, like, so people, I think, will sometimes confuse the fact that, okay, yeah, your body might only be able to use at least what we commonly hear, right? Up to 40 grams in terms of muscle protein synthesis, although it sounds like it could be higher depending on the
Oh,
form.
you mean like in a single feeding, that kind
Yeah.
of thing?
Yeah,
Right.
within an
But even
hour.
if you have, let's say, too much for the day, it's not like, okay, my muscles aren't using it, so like the body's gonna waste it. Like, with them, you forget that like enzymes, messenger hormones, everything else like in your body requires protein. Like, so it gets used, even if it's not getting used maybe in your muscles per se.
Can I go back? Who used the caveman analogy? I'm just curious.
You,
I did.
yes, you did it on you were on stage.
And I was talking about clubbing a woman on the head.
You were talking about protein intake and how high protein, you were so funny that day. I think it was ISSN 2 years ago. And you were talking about these high protein diets and how you would have to be an idiot to think that you stopped utilizing protein because it hit a certain point. You're like, even cavemen who used to hit their women over their head and throw them in the caves knew better or something. I don't know how you phrased it, but it stuck with me because I was like,
Okay.
that's a really weird way to say it, but I agree. So
I feel like
Tony,
I got that analogy from Tony. That's something Tony and I would have came up with.
well, I was going to say, Tony said something really funny a couple of years ago. I can't remember. It was at some sort of presentation type setting. I don't remember what it was, but somebody was saying something about paleo and our ancestors ate this. And Tony said something to the degree of, do you think our ancestors really care how they ate? Like, they were hungry. If it was food, it was food. It was in front of them. They ate it. If they didn't care, like, oh, this isn't gluten-free, I can't eat this. They're like, oh, this is dairy, let me not have. They were hungry. They ate exactly what was in front of them, whether it was a plant or a lion. Like,
I would imagine they were quite omnivoric, if that is an actual word, right? They didn't have the liberty as we do here in the United States of fighting over specific diets.
right.
Food was too scarce for that, for sure.
Yeah, I'd be eating berries and bark. I mean, if I was hungry, but just give me calories. Sort of on this protein tip or food tip. The idea that, and I hear this a lot, and I always, well, I'll get your opinion first, but the idea of what we call the foods first approach, which I've always thought is kind of an odd way to frame it, but I want to hear what that means to you guys. What is a foods first approach? Because I'm thinking, well, what the hell is second? If that's first, what's second?
Do you want my interpretation of it, or do you want the interpretation of the academy?
Actually, academy and then you.
So I think that, and I probably should preface that I'm not speaking on behalf of the academy. I'm just speaking in terms of like what we were taught, because I don't want them to come like yelling at me or anything like that. But
that'd be funny.
what we're taught in school is that like supplementation is not necessary, or in times can be super harmful. And once again, I think this is a very common thing where they can take something small, or sure, if you're, consuming a supplement, let's say from China, that possibly has adulterated, ingredients in it, then like, yeah, that could be a real harm for it. But that doesn't mean that every supplement out there is bad for you. So the idea is that if you're eating a varied, balanced diet with lots of fruits and vegetables, that there's really no need to supplement with anything because you're getting all your micronutrients from your diet.
Yeah, Tony says stay away from supplements from Wuhan, China. That's what he told me.
Oh yeah, I've heard this might not be that good, but you know what? I've heard just roll the dice, see what happens. Maybe you'll grow like an extra arm.
Okay. Okay. Now, what's your point of view? That's the academy, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that supplementation has its benefits. First off, if you're deficient in something and I don't know, you're not able to meet it through your diet, whether it's because the food that you're choosing to consume, or maybe you're having a reason with malabsorption or something, obviously a supplement's going to be helpful. In terms of sports, there are certain supplements that we know, like we can use creatine as the example. I think, what is it, 2 pounds of chicken a day to get the therapeutic dose of creatine. I'm not going to eat 2 pounds of raw chicken a day. It's not happening. Like,
I hope you don't eat any pounds of raw chicken, Cassie.
no, that's true.
Raw beef, maybe half pound.
Yeah, right.
I'll do raw beef, but like in that sense, then like, supplementation is really beneficial. I think what happens, and we can say this is very common, is that people, because you look at things like the athletic greens or like the powdered greens and powdered fruits, and people all of a sudden, instead of eating fruits and vegetables and instead of eating real food, they start drinking protein shakes, they start drinking all these powdered drinks that have polyphenols and this and all this other crap in it in place of real food. And that to me is where supplementation isn't helpful. Like you should still eat real food, and the supplements you're taking should have a purpose. They're not to be shied away from, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Katie, what do you think?
So since it's funny because I agree with everything Cassie just said, from the academy standpoint to her own. And since I joined the supplement industry, my knowledge has totally exploded and my viewpoint has changed a little bit more. I agree. I think the common misconception of food first, supplement second is because people think that they're replacing it. And that's the word is supplement, right? You're supplementing the diet. But I also feel like there's a place for them, not just for sports nutrition, not just for active nutrition. I think for everybody. Creatine's the perfect example. It's good for everybody. It's good for a magnitude of things, right? But also, there's some really cool, innovative supplements on the market that are good for so many different things that you can tack on for people who, you know, just want to perform better or be better, especially in the cognitive space. I mean, people in their 30s and 40s and above could really benefit from things other than fish oils, other than polyphenols. There's just some really interesting research going on with supplements. And I think it's only going to get better as we progress forward because people are starting to recognize that supplements have a place, and research really helps to back the message of how they're beneficial. So I love protein shakes. I love creatine. I take a multivitamin, not because I don't think I'm getting it from my diet, but there are some days where I may not touch a vegetable or a fruit because I just don't want to.
I did that the other day.
Right? So like, you got to think about it. Every day is different. Your diet every day is different. So one day I may only get 50 grams of protein, whereas the next I may get 150 or 200, you know? So I think that's where supplements come in. It's not always a take it every day sort of thing, but I love them. And I don't think they're going away. I think they're just going to get more and more popular.
I've also heard the really cool argument is the reason why a food first approach doesn't work is because our food, and this might be more of a first world problem, but the food that we're getting in the supermarket a lot of times has, unless you're getting something that's frozen or canned, has traveled quite the distance to get to our supermarket so we can, you know, have certain foods year round. And so they're, I don't want to say deficient or void in nutrients, but the longer something, the more time that has passed since it's been harvested, the less nutrients it has in it. So there are some people that use the theory that like our food is not supplying what it should be anyways in the first place. So even if you try to take the food first approach, you're still going to end up deficient in certain micronutrients.
Yeah.
Tony, any comments?
No, I think that we got two individuals here who hit it beautifully. I can understand this concept of food first and, you know, well balanced. I don't know what that means fully because there are certainly geographical differences. ethnic differences in dietary practice. So there's a lot of things to think there. But from an athletic performance perspective, I think it'd be very challenging to get everything, absolutely everything you need when you're in excessive training volumes from the food first alone approach, largely because a good deal of your day is spent training and you may just not have enough time to eat all the given nutrients, electrolytes, and all the foods, substances that you need. So from an athletic performance standpoint, I think, yeah, okay, you want to say food first, eat first. It probably provides the platform for those supplementations to actually be even more efficacious, because there are things we haven't even identified in some of these foods that may be necessary for a given supplement to work, to full potential. But I don't see how, based upon the American diet, we could say, food first, because it's obvious nobody's doing food first. They're doing Chick-fil-A actually Chick-fil-A would be better than what most people are doing. Let's go with Popeyes and, everything else that is completely nutrient deficient.
Hey,
So-
Popeyes is my favorite fried chicken.
I've never been in Popeyes.
So
There's a Popeyes literally 1 mile from my house, and I go.
I hear it's good.
Popeyes is good. But I'm Chick-fil-A. So for dietetics, you have to do rotations, like so many hours in a community setting, clinical setting, and a food service setting. So I was lucky enough to do my food service rotation at Chick-fil-A. And let me tell you,
He has the best stories from there.
their quality control is insane. Like I've never seen anything like it. I was lucky enough to be there when they came one time. And so they order, you sit there, like they have the manager, whoever's the manager on that hour, and you sit there with the person from corporate and they order food, and then she brings the food out. And I mean, her job, I want her job, because her job literally is to go to Chick-fil-A, like around the state or whatever her region is, and eat Chick-fil-A. Like she's getting paid to do that. And she will measure the temperature of the French fries. She will assess the crispiness of the French fries. She opened the chicken sandwich. And this is where I learned that pickles at Chick-fil-A can be dating, but not mating. So they can be touching, but they cannot be overlapping.
Cassie, I tell that story to my kids every time we go to Chick-fil-A. I'm like, open it and see if they're dating or mating.
Which
Oh
is
my
crazy
God.
to me. Like they literally have quality control for the placement of your pickles on your sandwich. Like
I've never been in a Chick-fil-A
Now
ever.
you're gonna go.
Yeah, well, I'm door dashing right now. The quality control has inspired me here, Cass.
and they're very, very efficient. So the one I was at was in Fort Lauderdale. We were next to a McDonald's. So the McDonald's during their rush hour, I think, would service something like 30 cars per hour. During our rush hour, which I think was anywhere between 12 to 4, we would do 150 cars on average per hour. Like, wow. And that line, I mean, yeah, sometimes it would back up, but I mean, that line moves like pretty quickly. Like it was really fascinating. And for me, it was really cool from a dietetic standpoint to say that I was at a fast food place, because I feel like that's very anti-dietetic.
It's heresy.
Just see like all the moving pieces that go into that. And like I said, I'll never forget the pickles. The pickles were like my favorite thing.
Okay, so it's dating, not mating.
Dating, not mating.
All right, very good. Let's remember that, Joey.
I'm going to be checking those pickles out now. I don't know if that applies to McDonald's. Or
I
Burger
got one
King.
the other day and there were 3 pickles and they were all mating. And I was like, ooh, no-nos all across the board. But
Oh, wow, we're getting now with 3. This is okay. That's a
breaking
big
some rules
problem.
that day. Yeah.
It's called a threesome pickle.
Yeah.
Okay. On this same tip, not the mating pickles. The idea, and I remember this might have been at ISSN, and this was sort of a popular meme at the time. The idea that you need to clean up your diet first before you take a supplement. And I'll let you guys define what you mean by clean up, but I think it's total bullshit. But I want to know what you guys think. You don't have to agree with me, by the way. You could say I'm full of it.
No, I've never heard that before.
Oh, you haven't?
No, I think that's the most loaded.
Can I ask a stupid question?
You can ask stupid one and an intelligent one at the same time.
Well, I don't know if I'm good for intelligent, but like, am I scrubbing my foot? Like, what do you mean by clean? Like, let's do like
Well, okay.
Sure.
It typically, for instance, it typically applies to, let's say, a high school wrestler. Okay, high school wrestler wants to put on muscle mass, but what do high school kids eat? They eat junk. They eat pizza. They eat burgers. They skip breakfast. They eat Pop-Tarts. oh, but he wants to take creatine because creatine might help him put on lean body mass. So the typical reply that I've been exposed to is like, well, you got to fix your diet first before you take a supplement, which of course has no basis in science, but people love to say it because it's virtue signaling and they feel good. So that's
not
why.
do both at the same time? I don't understand. Yeah.
Well, of
Well,
course.
everyone do both at the same time, but I don't like the idea that like, if I eat fast food one time, it doesn't make me healthy. Just like if I eat a piece of broccoli one time, it doesn't make me a vegetarian. So like, I just don't understand how like, and this is also coming as someone, I guess I should preface that like my favorite like midnight snack has varied from, you know, like tasty cakes, cupcakes. So right now I'm on a peanut M&M kick. Like I eat a lot of quote unquote, not standard RD food. But I really
I think I can kind of contest to that. This is literally just sits on my desk.
yeah.
We got
One time I ate all the frosting off the cupcakes. I had these mini cupcakes that I bought. There was like a pack of 16. And in the middle of the night, I just ate the frosting off it. And my husband came out and he was like, I can't eat these now. And I'm like, oh, you know,
do you see how she and I are the black sheep? You have to understand the other people in our class were very health conscious, almost like what's the terminology for someone that's too healthy? Is it orthorexia? Orthorexia, like to where like they would have a bag of carrots in their purse, and maybe they liked carrots, no judgment. I'm just saying Cassie and I tend to be the ones with the M&Ms in our purse, and you would get these looks sometimes of judgment, and it's just like not everyone's diet's the same. Not everyone needs the same amount of certain vitamins and minerals or even protein. Everyone's diet's different. That's why nutrition is not a one size fits all approach. And that's why like what you were saying with someone who's on a performance diet, you know, you're not going to get what you need from a food first approach. You have to supplement. It's just not going to work. And so like Cassie was saying, I don't think because you eat something one day is going to totally destroy your body or your diet, or because, you know, you change every day. Your hormones change every day. Your activity level changes every day. So I don't get that. I think just do your best every day, not even every day.
Well,
it also depends on the goal of the person. So if this person is wrestling, I mean, yeah, we can make suggestions, but at the end of the day, the best suggestions are going to be one that we adhere to. Wrestler, and you tell him like don't ever eat pizza again, he's probably going to be like yeah okay, and then turn around and like does what he wants. So like trying to find, I guess, the happy medium of like, okay, these are the foods that are going to like support you doing like your sport in terms of getting you to like, I guess, your weight goal or putting on more mass, but here's a way of still enjoying your food, but still eating in a way that supports like your goal and your performance goal too. And I think that's something that like should always be looked at too, is when you're talking to someone like I'm not eating for a performance goal. I'm eating because I enjoy food. Like I don't have a specific performance goal. Like when you talk to an athlete, their approach is going to be a lot different because their goals are a lot different and their life is centered around a specific performance goal, whether it's their food, their sleep habits, their training schedules, what their recovery looks like, social life is all going to be influenced by what their current goal is.
Tony, you had a comment?
No, well articulated. Really, I don't, you know, I've not heard that as often too, the clean up the diet in advance type philosophy, but yeah, I mean, well, clean eating I hear all the time. But to Dr. A's point, I've never said don't take, you know, I don't often hear don't take the supplement until you know, until you clean the diet up. You know, but nevertheless, start both as quick as you can. If you're an athlete, you know, hey, try to eat better, get some foods you need. You can take some foods in you don't need because your training volume's so high, and get the supplements you may need. Pretty simple.
I think the other way it's framed is a crappy diet on supplements is still a crappy diet.
Exactly. Right.
Which,
yeah.
And my point is, okay, so.
My also argument is that if you're stranded on like a desert island, Oreos will keep you alive if that's all you have. I mean, you might not be in the best health shape by the time you get rescued, but let me tell
I
you,
will choose Oreos over carrots if I'm on an island.
Right?
I want calories.
Oh, carrots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what Tony was saying, and I just know from the small amount of time that I spent with some of the athletes at Nova and their strength and conditioning, like a lot of times they were traveling and on the road and they're given a food allowance, but that food allowance is so small. It's
Yeah.
not like they can go buy
Exactly.
the stuff they want unless they all pool their money together and have someone go to Publix, and then you're having somebody responsible for cooking, and that's not feasible for them. So they are eating at Chick-fil-A, they are eating at Panera, they're eating at, I can never say this right, so I'm going to say it wrong, Chipotle, whatever.
Chipotle.
Yeah.
So that's where they're eating, because that when you're on a budget, especially in college, I mean, come on, I ate ramen a lot when I was in college, among other
Silly
things.
ramen, what are you talking about? It's like
Uh,
the greatest meal ever.
But-
Throw in some shrimp and steak and lots of veggies and you got a whole meal.
But these comments, like he is talking about, make people like not want to eat something, which I think ends up being more detrimental, because at the end of the day, an athlete needs energy and calories. Like ideally, sure, if we can get it in nutrient dense foods, that's wonderful. But like to what Tony was saying, like most nutrient dense foods are also the foods that you need in like large volumes, because
Very large.
they're not very energy dense.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
supplementation is going to be necessary, because you're going to have to eat these foods that are more energetically dense, that might not have the most amount of nutrients, just to support the sheer volume of training that you have
That's right.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we way back when we did some of those high protein diet studies, Cass, do you remember the vegan bodybuilder?
Yeah.
I think he had to do between 6 and 8 protein shakes, and it was vegan shakes, just to get protein in, because there's no way he would ever get that through food. You'd be eating all day. It's just not possible. So there's a pragmatic issue with, the whole foods first and clean up your diet and all that BS, because you're just not going to do it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, Darren Willoughby, who's probably the largest scientist we know, says, he goes, bro, my jaw'd be tired if I had to eat just foods for protein. So I'm doing supplements, brother. So,
Yeah.
so even guys that big, it's there's a pragmatic issue to it. So, but I know when I've been asked, in terms of working with teenage kids, and usually guys trying to gain weight, that I almost always hear, at least from the parents, that will he fix his diet first? I'm like, no, I ain't fixing nobody's diet, because people don't change their diet. If they want to eat like shit, they'll eat like shit. And especially a teenage boy, you think a teenage boy is going to fix their diet?
Right.
Hey, Tony, you were once a teenage boy. Would you have fixed your diet?
Well, I'm fortunate my diet was pretty good, but I believe in getting a couple. Here's all I'll ask him, because to your point, I'm not going to ask for complete revision of the diet, but I might say, guys, can you get me a couple of these in a day? Just give me a couple of things you need. I'm not going to stop you from eating pizza and going out with your buddies and getting some ice cream. That's not my point. Just throw in a couple more chicken breasts for me here and there, and then we got a deal, right? Because at that age, their caloric expenditure is so high.
Crazy
That-
high.
Right. So what I do is try to negotiate with them just to put in a couple of things that they absolutely need, and don't always replace something half decent with complete junk. But you're not going to get the kids at that age to do it. To exactly to your point. And and then as far as the parents go with the supplements, what amazes me, and you all have probably run into this a lot at the high school level. I don't know how many times, even to date, I hear, I don't want my son taking that. I don't want my son touching whey. I don't want him touching the creatine, but they zoom right over to Sonic Burger right after practice and eat, get a 78-ounce Coke. And I don't even know what's in Sonic Burger, and, all kinds of fries and onion rings, but whey protein and creatine, major problem. That's gonna propose a big problem for him.
The burgers aren't bad, actually.
They may be great. I have no idea. Yeah. Sonic was just one example of many things.
Energy drinks too, it just
That's a good point.
that don't make sense. Like I love like the one I hear a lot, and I'm sure Katie gets this if she ever says that she's a dietitian, is like, oh, sugar's really bad for you. And I'm like, no, I mean, you're like, you need it. Like, it's just people feel very strongly about food, even though they're misinformed. And like a lot of times I've given up trying to talk to people about it. Sometimes I used to hear things and I'd want to go over and correct people. And now I'm just like,
Isn't it
Screw
funny
it.
how over time you do that? You're in the beginning, it's like, oh, I want to help, and like spread the knowledge. And after a while, you just give up. You're just like, there's so much ridiculous shit out there that you can't fight at all. And honestly, the people that are dishing this stuff are so out of touch. It's just not even waste. It's just a waste of time.
You're right on, Katie, and I am so old and tired because Dr. A and I have been dealing with this nonsense. We've both been doing this since we're about 18. So that puts us almost near, 40 years of nonsense. And you're absolutely right. And the dietary wars are a waste of time. The one style, you have to do it this way. Humans are meant to eat this way. And that's all you get. This food is going to kill you. Carbs are bad if you're a carnivore. And it is quite aggravating, but to your point, you don't message anymore for the general population. You message to those who genuinely come for you for help, because at least you can make substantive change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
speaking of like crazy things, there's this new, I don't know how new it is, but new to me as in like, I just stumbled across it, but it's a flavored water. It's naturally no calories because it doesn't have anything in it. What it has near the mouthpiece is a scent ring. And so it will flavor your water by making it smell like whatever flavor you want. And I just think that's an awful lot of work to go through to just drink what
To
you
drink
want.
water.
Yeah. Or like just drink the lemonade.
Jeez.
You know what? The people that say that they don't like water, I'm like, first of all, if you're a water snob, like I am, water tastes different. Like if you give me Dasani versus Aquafina versus Fiji, they're all going to taste different. So people who tell me I hate water, I'm like, well, you just haven't had the right water. I want you to go buy every bottle of water there is and find one that you like. Because like I have my filtered water that I get, I will never drink out of the tap. But like if someone hands me a Dasani and I've been hiking for miles, I won't touch it. I'd rather be dehydrated than touch
I don't like
Dasani.
Dasani.
Dasani tastes
Awful.
good and crisp.
Oh, it's so gross.
We're gonna do a water test at ISSN. And
Yes.
Katie, taste test.
I'm all for it.
Awesome.
Well,
I also drink out of
Fiji.
some boats. I've done that.
Fiji is my favorite.
Atta girl, Katie, Fiji all the way.
Yeah, you like Fiji because the bottle's pretty. Come on, you know.
Oh, the bicarbonate is a delightful taste.
It is so refreshing. That and Evian. Those are my two favorite. Those
Evian's nice. Hey, maybe I can ask you both a question, and I'm not knowledgeable on this, and I think it'd be pretty good, just quickly and informative for those listening in. What are the issues with the tap water? Because that's really thought about quite a bit as well. Like you said, Katie, I ain't going near it. What for? Just quickly, no long dissertation, but for what reason is that?
For me, the regions I've lived in, so Florida is totally different from Arizona.
Okay.
But whenever there's high rain, they chlorinate the crap out of the water to where like if you get in the shower, I feel like I'm in a bleach bath where my eyes are burning. And I'm like, I'm not drinking that. I can't even stand to be around it. But also the taste is bad. So when I taste it, I literally taste metals.
Okay.
And they could be just regionally because I've heard, oh, Colorado has the best water. Maybe they do. I don't know. But all I know is Arizona and Florida water suck. And I won't
So
drink
you feel like you're in a swimming pool, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
gross.
Kind of I enjoy that, but I also really like the smell of bleach. So
Okay, well.
but I
Or you
know
can
like
tell me.
for in Hillsborough County, the water is like highly contaminated. And so like I know like when I went to college at USF, like I grew up in Broward County where you could drink the tap water, and I'll still drink the tap water down here. It doesn't bother me at all. But like obviously if I'm in Flint, Michigan, I'm not drinking the tap water.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring up Flint, Michigan. I don't think anyone will get that.
But like Hillsborough County.
Is that Aaron Brockovich?
No,
that
Flint-
was in Flint, Michigan, though. That was in California, wasn't it?
Was it Cali?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
P&L.
Flint was
County.
about probably 5 years ago, I think. We had some issues. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but like Hillsborough County, so I had like, like the poor college student jobs you had. I worked for this like political action company called Clean Water Action, where they made me go knock on doors and say, do you know how dirty your water is? And so like I know in Hillsborough County and I think Pinellas County, which is the neighboring county, they
Mhm.
have a lot of issues with contaminated water. So like you're talking about different maybe types of bacterias or heavy metals, or more than like the allotted or allowable amount that is supposed to be in there.
Yeah.
So Katie, this question's for you, since you went from graduate school to working in the dietary supplement industry. And just a little background, if you back in the 1990s, when I graduated with my doctorate, the idea that anyone would work in the supplement industry was a way to kill your career. That was sort of the zeitgeist of the time. So circa 1998, 1999, when Jeff Stout and I gave a talk at ACSM, and half the audience just hated us because we talked about supplements. The president of ACSM at that time said, if you want to have a career, don't do research in supplements, which is basically a veiled threat. But the way Jeff Stout and I took it is we both left academia and went to work in the supplement industry. And the big lie that we were told, this is 20 years ago, or 22 years ago, that once you go into the industry, you can never get back in academia, which of course is a lie, but
Yeah.
people like making shit up all the time. So as a dietitian going to supplement industry, there's got to be sort of this, I don't know, there's a culture that would look at you and say, what are you doing? Because it's
Oh, yeah.
not typically where dietitians go.
Oh yeah, I've had to fight it. And whenever I find another fellow dietitian in an industry event, like we just gravitate towards each other. I'm like, and we all have the same stories. Our dietetics program didn't teach us what we needed to know about supplements in the industry because they were kind of quote unquote anti-supplements. So to be able to see through that BS and recognize the importance of them, especially with athletes, jumping over to this side of things has been difficult, but really eye-opening. And I love doing the research here. I think it's really important for athletes. And that's why I came, because I want to make sure that athletes know, because if there's a dietitian that's feeding them stuff, and I'm not going to mention an organization of dietitians that work in sports nutrition, but I went to their event and someone gave a talk on supplements to all the future dietitians out there and current practicing dietitians. And the message was so ridiculous. My blood was boiling sitting there. I wanted to stand up and like scream because they were so misinformed. And you're telling the 200 people who are about to work directly with athletes that supplements are bad and supplements should be regular, and don't let anyone that's an athlete take a supplement unless it has a third-party testing label, which now that I'm in the industry, that doesn't mean that the product's bad. It just means it's really expensive to get that label. And then to maintain that label, every batch is $3,000-$4,000 to test for that label to go on the package. So what they should be teaching is what ingredients are on the label. How do you research those ingredients? Is it an efficacious dose that's been clinically tested, or is it a BS dose? And are they paired appropriately? Like, is there thoughtful innovation behind the formulation, or is it just the kitchen sink being thrown at you that's not going to be beneficial? So I think when people see a dietitian working in the industry, I sometimes get the side eye, but then I get other people that go, oh, wow, it's nice that you bring in a different way of looking at things, because again, I am the black sheep, and I do think that there's a place for supplements, and this is a way to kind of expand our profession. So Cassie and I, teaching, and she's teaching. I would like to go back to teaching eventually, but like being able to tell these young dietitians, young RDs to be, supplements aren't bad. There is a place for them. Teach you the appropriate way. There are RDs in the industry, and that is a job outlet that we were not told about going through the program. And I think more RDs need to be involved and kind of bridging that gap to make sure that we all kind of get together and understand that it's not just one way. There's multiple ways.
Well, Katie's job specifically too, not only is it in the supplement industry, but it deals with research.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is not something you get a lot of in general in the program, once again, because it's a professional program. So they brought guest speakers in, and I think they did bring somebody from like Kind Nutrition, like the food company, who was like more on like the research side of things, but they really didn't talk as much. And I don't necessarily think it's because they're anti-research. I think it just goes back to the indoctrination of dietetics. It's just you continue to do what you've learned, and unless you have people like that question the system or question why things are being done or push for something to be done differently, most people are going to continue to go along with it. And I know Katie was pretty vocal, like with her master's project, about wanting it to be a specific type of like research thing and wanting to get that research experience, because we weren't really getting that in the program, or at least when I was there, we weren't really getting that in the program.
Yeah, I was told not to do what I wanted to do. And luckily, again, having a good mentor like Doug Kalman, you know, encouraging me to go for it. And I'm actually about to submit the publication finally 2 years later. I presented it at ISSN 2 years ago as the abstract, but I'm finally publishing the full paper, you know, 2 years later. But I mean, again, it's the mentorship, having good networking of people like both of you and being able to tell others that are kind of going the same pathway, like, hey, bridge out to these people that are full of knowledge and expertise, because you may not be getting what you need in your academic setting. And there's others out there that are really intelligent and want to help you. So,
You know,
you.
that talk where I don't know who it was, you don't have to mention the name, where they were speaking to 200 dietitians who may be working with athletes. And you made them in the sole one who was questioning what they were saying. You know, it sort of reminds me, Tony, of the movie 300. There's like 300 of us, and there's like 1 million Persians coming through, and those 1 million Persians are actually RDs, but they're not kind of RDs. And Tony, I'll take the first like 1,000, but you still got a bunch coming through. Now, going back to the 90s, here's what's interesting. You feel like when you meet another dietitian who's in the industry, it's like you bond because you're such a minority there. But think about this: in the 90s, there was one dietitian, everyone hated him. His name was Doug Kalman.
I know.
As much as they did not like me, they hated him because he was a traitor.
Yep.
Like, you're a dietitian. I can't believe you're doing this stuff. And I was just laughing. I'm like, hey, Doug, they really hate you out here.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting how you're getting it, maybe not to the same degree because others have come before you, but it's just amazing how closed-minded so many people are to, I guess, new ideas or just critical thinking. I think that's what it boils down to. To me, you know, when people say, what's the most successful trait of scientists? Is it they got to be smart? No, but they can't be dumb, right? You can't be dumb. You don't have to be a genius, but you got to be at least skeptical.
Yeah.
If you're not skeptical, you're just a parrot. Now someone teaches you something, you blah, 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 you flap your lips, you know, like a parrot, and anybody can do that. But it's good that you guys are skeptical, because if you're not, then you're just another parrot. I mean, that's boring.
Can we just for 1 second too, like the pet peeve, like things that are parroted, like why does every dietitian recommend yogurt and berries as a pre-workout snack? Like it's just this, every dietitian I just don't understand. There's so many other things you could eat. Like, and there's just certain things, and maybe it's because we're taught that in school, or like toast with jelly, which, like, don't get me wrong, like both of those are great options, but why does everyone have to have the same option? Like, it really annoys me. Like,
I hate yogurt.
Yeah, I didn't. So is that like, I'm probably not following enough RDs? Is that, so that's standard? It's yogurt and berries. Is that it? Is that okay?
Yeah, standard yogurt and berries,
Oatmeal.
like, because no one as an RD apparently like wants to go out there and say, yeah, have a graham cracker, have a bowl of Lucky Charms. Like, you know, like you could have something like that's a little bit more fun and on the go that would still be a great pre-workout snack. Have a couple Oreos, like Oreos would be a great pre-workout snack. I'm not saying your whole diet should consist of Oreos, you know, but like, why does it have to be limited to like a nutrient dense, like why can't it be something more fun and like enjoyable? Like you should, and this is where I realize this is that like a lot of different foods can be used, is if you look at what like these ultra marathon runners eat, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, some of them, like my friend Joe, who's older and he does the ultra marathon, he like has like roasted potatoes. Like, I think that's kind of weird.
That's weird.
But like, I don't know, who's the one guy who orders a pizza and he'll have the pizza delivered to like wherever he's running, and he rolls it up like a burrito and literally eats the entire pizza while he's running too, which is just amazing.
I love it.
Like,
yeah. Well, remember, Tony, what Victoria ate when she paddled from Cuba?
Yeah. Wasn't it Oreos?
Yes,
Oreos,
she ate Oreos.
Everything.
Alfredo noodles.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
So
Yeah,
He's a beast. I
All
love it.
right, so let's compromise, Cass. How about yogurt and Oreos as a pre-workout?
There we go. I'm down
I'm
for
gonna
that.
mix some Oreos in my yogurt. Well, that sounds
They
delicious.
make those for kids. My daughters have them.
Oh,
Like the
wow.
little cap is Oreo, crushed up Oreos, you pour it in. Why not?
I can't wait for social media to attack Cassie for licking a frosting off of cupcakes and suggesting Oreos. This will be fun.
Oh, it's delicious though. Frosting is incredible.
Okay, hey, I know Cassie, you have some other commitments. So before we sign off, tell us what your upcoming or your current projects are, and what you're going to be doing in the next few months. So we'll start with Katie first.
So I have a publication that was just published yesterday. It's related to Nutrition 21, but it has to do with a supplement that can help with DOMS, so delayed onset muscle soreness.
Can you say the supplement, or you gotta wait till it's published?
Nitrosigine.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a pre-workout
familiar with it.
vasodilation, promoting nitric oxide. So we looked at different markers like lactate dehydrogenase, myoglobin. Now I can't remember the paper.
Actually, can I ask you a quick question about that?
Sure.
If you don't mind. Whenever you look at these papers on DOMS, they'll look at multiple markers: myoglobin, LDH, creatine kinase, blah, 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 blah.
That's exactly what LDH was the other one. Thank you.
Right. And then they'll do a visual analog scale to assess, subjectively whether you're sore or not. And in a lot of these papers, so let's say they do this 4 markers, they'll find one of them seems to show something. So the question is the effect real, or is it just sort of happenstance? Because I get this question a lot, because I read these papers, I'm like, okay, that of those 4 markers, LDH, creatine kinase, myoglobin, and a visual analog scale, which would you want to change?
Yeah. So
analog scale, right? Because
I would
at the end
think.
of the day, like if all the markers improve, but I still feel sore, I could really get
Right.
all the markers.
Right.
I still feel sore.
Right.
Like,
yeah, so the paper is not, and again, with any sort of research, everyone here on this call and probably people watching know it's never going to be perfect, and there's always
Right.
going to be issues, and that's why we have to keep replicating it. But that's why you look at so many markers. Like we also looked at blood flow, so the size of your leg circumference, is it actually indeed increasing? Are you really getting some blood flow along with that, feedback from the study participants? So that was just published. I'll be speaking at ISSN, kind of about the formulation behind industry, like how people, and I'm not allowed to mention any certain products in general, but a lot of really big name companies are taking the approach of researching their own final product, which I think is so important for.
That's very good.
everybody.
Yeah.
A lot of them aren't going to roll out for another year or two because, a lot of us, like me in general, like to help them with study design. But I think that's a really big step in the right direction for the supplement industry, is to show like people are investing in the research. It does cost a lot of money, but I think that's really cool. So I'll be talking about that. And I did just get accepted to the same program as Cassie, just following her coattails,
Very cool.
PhD program. So that will be starting in a couple months. And I moved back to Florida, and Jose will be my neighbor.
Moving to Stewart.
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah, we're going to work your tail off, collecting data, writing, more writing.
Writing.
I know I'm writing 2 papers right now, and I have another study that's starting in 2 months. Hopefully another one after that. We'll see.
Awesome. So Cassie, what are you up to?
Being a student, no, we have that upcoming FTO protein overfeeding study, which I know we'll do another cycle at some point later, probably this year. So if you're listening and you're local and you want to participate in that, feel free to reach out and we can give you some more information about it. And wrapping up that e-gamer study with actually Tony and Jose and Jamie Charter and some other people. And then we have am I allowed to say the name of the energy drink? Because it's really funny.
Sure.
The whoop assault is what it's called, but it has ass highlighted, which makes it really funny. So it's by Jocko. And so we've got an energy drink study coming up. And then of course, just some writing stuff, working with Tony on some fight sports research and literature, which is really exciting.
Well, awesome. Before I sign off, I want to promote the ISSN. Again, the conference is June 15 to 17. It's in Fort Lauderdale Beach. It's at the Westin. So make sure if you're listening, register at ISSN.net. That's ISSN.net. Katie, Cassie, Tony, thank you.
Wonderful.
This
Nice
was a
job,
great-
ladies. Really
Great
good.
1 hour. And hey, we'll see you. And Katie, I'm excited you're moving to Stewart. This will be
Me
good.
too. We start paddleboarding with you guys.